Every day we go through various different emotions, which gives us a human experience. However, sometimes we are pulled by happiness and sometimes we are pulled by unhappiness. Sometimes we feel pulled by love and sometimes we are pulled by anger. So, is it possible to stay still instead of getting tangled between one state of emotion to the other state of emotion? Let's check that out in verse 23 from Taoteching. Hi, welcome back to Oneness. Today is day 23 and we will be looking at verse 23 from Taoteching. As usual, let's observe a few seconds of silence. Thank you. So now let's look at verse 23 from Taoteching. To talk little is natural. High winds do not last all morning. Heavy rain does not last all day. Why is this? Heaven and earth. If heaven and earth cannot make things last forever, how is it possible for us? Those who follow the Tao are at one with the Tao. Those who are virtuous experience virtue. Those who lose their way are lost. When you are at one with the Tao welcomes you. When you are at one with virtue, virtue is always there. When you are at one with loss, loss is experienced willingly. Those who do not trust enough will not be trusted. Let's observe a few seconds to sink in. So this verse 23, I like to call it as the way of stillness. Because we all have our own natural state. However, we get pulled by various different emotions and then we try to go from one emotion to the other emotion. Some emotion we consider as positive, some emotion we consider as negative. So there is a constant struggle to move from negative emotion to the positive emotion. And in that emotion, it becomes a struggle. So instead of struggling between two different emotions, be it positive to negative, is it possible to stay still? Because the natural state of everything is stillness. To give you an example before we go into the verse, in a pond or a still water body, if you throw the stone in it, there will be ripples. However, the ripples will settle down after a point. And the other example is, even if you take an elastic band, we can stretch it or we can tangle it, I can squeeze it. However, the moment we leave it, it goes back to the normal state. And that is the state we are talking about here as a state of stillness. Now, let's go line by line and try to understand what Laotzu means in each line. To talk little is natural. High winds do not last all morning. Heavy rains does not last all day. So the first three lines, Laotzu talks about how nothing can stay forever. Everything, be it our emotion or an energy or a resource or a state, it all has to come back to the original state at some point in time. And what is the original state? It is, I call it as a stillness as a place of return. So he talks about to talk little is natural. Of course, we cannot keep talking hours and hours and hours without stop. And likewise, be it rain or a wind, it has to come to a halt at some point in time. It cannot be forever. Even if it is longer by few days, but still it has to come to an end. So likewise, these emotions within us, we all go through various emotions. Even if you call that as love, happiness, it all has to come back to its original state, which is stillness. So how I see this is, say for an example, you're watching something, say funny, comedy or a stand-up thing. And then if you're laughing, how long can we laugh? After some point in time, our jaws will start paining that we have to stop laughing. And likewise, even the positive emotions such as love. Yes, loving someone unconditionally is so important and that we can give it in abundance. However, the same love can also suffocate someone if it has become excessive. I'm sure you can relate to this. When someone, out of love, they wanted to offer us some food or something, but they will not allow us to make any decision. They're so protective and they want our well being, they keep giving, and that can suffocate people who we are loving as well. When you're talking about a positive state, the same thing applies to the other negative state which people define it as, like anger, sadness, unhappiness, irritation. Those emotions as well cannot go for long. It has to return back to a stillness. So that is how I see it in this verse. Let's go further and try to understand what Laotzu means. Why is this? Heaven and earth. If heaven and earth cannot make things last forever, how is it possible for us? And he clearly talks about the wind and rain and why it happens because of heaven and earth. So, is it heaven and earth? Is it permanent? Of course not. We all know that the earth will be consumed by sun, and our sun also one day will die. It will just explode and go away. So that is a very possibility and very nature of existence itself, which we have to accept. And then it goes back to the previous state, which is of stillness. And then, those who follow the Tao are at one with Tao. Those who are virtuous experience virtue. Those who lose their way are lost. In these lines, Laotzu clearly talks about when we understand the way of nature, then we can be one with the nature by accepting all the impermanence of both the states. It can be happiness or unhappiness. We will accept it and we will be at the place of peace and stillness. Those who are virtuous experience virtue. If we act from the place of goodness, we experience goodness. Those who lose their way are lost. This line, those who lose their way are lost, it's a little tricky. Here he means that when we lose out of our goodness and the nature of Tao, then we are lost. So when we lose our composure and stillness, then we will go out of our own self. And that's why whenever we see somebody, the person who is angry all the time, we call it as he's a very unstable person. Why do we call him that? Because we cannot predict his mood. I'm sure the same thing you would have seen in some of your boss or a parent or a colleague with someone that they just snap in a moment. They become so unpredictable. They're happy at one moment, they're unhappy at a different moment and angry at the different times. And what we call them? It is very difficult to predict his nature or his mood. And that's what they mean. And then he goes like, when you are at one with Tao, the Tao welcomes you. When you are one with the virtue always there. When you are at one with loss is experienced willingly. Here, Laotzu clearly points out that when we are one with the Tao welcomes us. When we are one with the nature welcomes us. When we act with the goodness or virtuous, then the virtue welcomes us and the goodness comes to us. When you are at one with the loss is experienced willingly. Here it is actually tricky, but in my interpretation it goes like this. Sometimes it is our human nature to snap. It can be anger or outburst of happiness or outburst of love. It can be outburst of anything, any emotion that we feel. And the moment we accept them, that okay, that was me and there is an outburst of say anger. When we accept those emotions willingly, then we are one with that loss. We will not go back and then say, oh, I wish I have not acted like that. oh, I wish that I could go back in time and change the words that I said, right? So we don't go through, say, some kind of the bad negative experience. That is why it is important to accept that even if there is an outburst of anger, accept that it is fine. That I lost my composure, and then I showed my anger, and that is fine. And now accept that willingly, then you will become one with that loss at that moment. So you no more like, go and feel bad about it and repent about it and just lose your, what do you say, a sanity, the mental sanity over what happened in the past. Rather, you willingly accept that nature of yours as well. With that, those last lines are, those who do not trust enough will not be trusted. So, the last two lines are clearly states that when we trust our inner self and accept it completely, and when we are at peace and stillness within us, then the outbursts become so minimal. Though we can experience happiness, but then we can come back to the place which is of written place is peace. At the same time, even if sometimes we lose our composure and get angry at someone, we won't regret of the action that we did. Instead, you come back to be peace within ourselves. And that's why we should trust our own inner self and inner emotion and stay within the place of stillness and peace. With that, we come to an end of verse 23. And one quick actionable thought for today is, observe your emotions today. Whatever the emotion may be, it can be positive, negative. When I say positive, it can be happiness, love, joy, kindness, and all those emotions. And whereas when I say negative, it can be anger, sadness, and etc. In both the sides, try to find yourself to see that how you can get back to a place of stillness. Instead of being like, tangled in all those emotional state, come back to your place of stillness and peace. And see that whether can you separate yourself from those emotions and be a vigilant observer of the emotions you're facing or you're going through. That way, you will become more mindful of your own emotions and stay much more composed, still, and at peace. With that, let's end day 23. Talk to you tomorrow. Thank you.